reality checkpoint, and on today's video we'll be talking about the man who saved the world from a nuclear exchange, from a nuclear war. I still remain your humble host, Uzoma Amini. In 1961, the Americans placed a nuclear capable missile at Turkey and Italy facing USSR, because then there was a Cold War going on between the Americans and the USSR, which is the Soviet Union. So the leader of USSR, Khrushchev, saw this as an imbalance. So he's looking for a way to make a balance of this. Remember, in the same year, this missile that the American placed at Turkey and Italy is called Jupiter missile, which is capable of striking any city in Moscow. So the Soviets saw this as a big threat and they have to deal with it. Same year, 1961, Cuba tried to be invaded by the Americans, but this invasion failed. So the leader of Cuba, Fidel Castro, he was so traumatized that the Americans are going to do this again. So he ran to the Soviet Union for help and economical aid because of the sanctions from the Western world. So Khrushchev saw this as a way to make a balance of these whole things. So Fidel Castro and Khrushchev, in a secret deal, made plans to place nuclear capable missile at Cuban soil. The Americans never knew about this. They never knew. So already, secretly, they have already moved some of the missile from Moscow to Cuba. The Americans never knew about this. So this construction of this missile launch pad has been going on till it was being spotted by a U-2 spy plane. Mind you, a spy plane was being shot down. And this really pissed off the Americans. So the Americans did some kind of a blockade to stop the Soviets to bring in more missiles into the country, into Cuba. Unknown to the Americans that there's a submarine laying in Cuba water, and this submarine is nuclear capable submarine. Like, it has a nuclear capable torpedo that could have started the first nuclear exchange in the world. The Americans never knew about this either. So it comes down to the submarine officers, because it has like 3 officers who has to authorize the launch of this torpedo. 2 of the Soviet officers has already agreed, let's launch these torpedoes, like the war is already on, because mind you, they've been disconnected from Moscow. So they already thought that the war is officially on. It's time for us to launch this nuclear torpedo. So one of the officer, Vasili Arkhipov, that is the Soviet officer, who is supposed to they need his final authorization to be able to launch this nuclear torpedo. But Vasili Arkhipov, this Soviet officer, was like, they should try to submerge on the surface of the water to, but his comrades were already pissed at him because, 2 officers has already, they've already voted in for the launch of this torpedo. And Vasili Arkhipov was like, just chill a little bit. I know it's a command, but just chill a little bit. Let's just submerge. If Vasili Arkhipov voted in and launched this nuclear torpedo, that could have been the first nuclear exchange in the world. So that was how this man saved the world from a nuclear exchange. From the first ever nuclear exchange. The president of America then, Kennedy, because the Soviet was like, if you want us to remove this missile we placed at Cuba, You have to remove the ones you placed at Turkey, the Jupiter missiles you placed at Turkey. Remember, Americans placed Jupiter missiles at Turkey and Italy. So in this deal, the Soviet was like, Khrushchev was like, you have to take those missiles away from Turkey and Italy. The Americans agreed to this. And they told the Americans, you have to agree that you won't invade Cuba ever again. The Americans agreed to this, never to invade Cuba. Remember, they tried to invade Cuba, but the invasion didn't go as planned. So they promised to never invade Cuba ever again. So the Americans secretly removed this Jupiter missile that they already stationed at Turkey and the one they had at Italy. The Soviets, in return, removed the missile they placed at Cuba. This missile they placed at Cuba is like 90 miles away from US mainland, which means they could be able to strike any US, like half of US mainland. They can strike them with a nuclear missile. So Khrushchev removed the whole missile. And the Americans promised never to invade Cuba. You've just seen it. And that was when the first hotline between Moscow and Washington was being established, whereby two countries can be able to reach out to each other, be like, you know, talk about different interests. Because mind you, if there was ever a nuclear exchange, the world could have been a wasteland. So big respect. This officer, Vasili Arkhipov, I won't really call him a Soviet hero. He's a global hero. He's all our hero. Because if this dude were to launch that, you and I already know, could have been the apocalypse, wasteland. So make sure you like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you on the next one. Vasili Arkhipov, the man of the people. Big respect for not launching that nuclear torpedo, because a lot of us wouldn't be alive today. A lot of the population in the world could have been wiped out by nuclear Armageddon, end time. So see you on the next one.